Welcome back to the Empower Hour. It's the Empower Hour every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have Empower Hour. Right now we're in this book, Unstoppable Self-Confidence by Andrew Leedham. And each week we go through one chapter, and this week we're on chapter 2. And chapter 2 is how to win the battle for control of your mind. How to win the battle for control of your mind. You know, I think that is the question of the hour. So he starts out chapter 2 on page 40. Those of you who have the book, those of you who like the book, there's a link in my bio. Starts out with this quote on page 40 for us to think about, to welcome to the room. You have absolute control over just one thing, your thoughts. This divine gift is the sole means by which you may control your destiny. If you fail to control your mind, you will control nothing else. And that is true. I think one thing that we need to begin to think about is that the only thing that we can control is ourselves. As much as we'd like to control the other things around us or that are happening to us or things that people are saying, we can't. But we can control what we say, we can control what we think, and we can control the degree to which what we think can either empower us or limit us. And it really depends what lens that we're looking through. And this chapter really touches all about how we can win that battle back for control. And there's lots of things that we're going to do. We're even going to try a strategy. But one question to ask yourself on page 41, one question to ask yourself, are you in control of your mind, or is your mind in control of you? Ask yourself that question. Are you in control of your mind, or is your mind in control of you? But we can find out. How do we find out? Sit there in silence for 15 seconds. Try to sit there in silence for 15 seconds and think about nothing. Just close your eyes and try to think about nothing. If some kind of a thought or something comes to your mind, you're not in control of your mind. It's simple. Close your eyes. Sit there. I mean, I'm not in control of mine right now, clearly. But I can't sit there and think of something. But if you can't sit there for 15 seconds, and not think about a thing, then there's one conclusion that you can make, that you are not necessarily in full control of your mind, at least not at this moment, right? Let me tell you, the mind is a powerful thing. It takes us places that we don't even want to go. Sometimes it takes us on good journeys, sometimes it takes us on bad journeys. It really just depends on what's going on in our lives. Are we paying attention to ourselves? Are we taking care of ourselves? What is it that we're doing for us in each day that goes by is really important. So why thought control matters? Why do we think thought control matters? Well, for multiple reasons thought control matters, right? We have the power to tell our own story. We have the power to interpret things from our environment, experiences we've had, people we've talked to, in ways that suit us, that bring us joy. But a lot of times we think about certain experiences and other things, and we don't get that same joy that we're looking for, that we need or require in these moments. And if that's happening, we need to check in with ourselves quite a bit. Lots of things that we can do to start controlling. But how to control your thoughts? Andrew Leedham talks about a gentleman that he worked, or that talked to him. Andy Shaw was his name, and he wrote this brilliant book called Creating a Bug-Free Mind. Okay, because clearly this is a problem throughout. This is not just a problem for you or I, right? This is a problem for a lot of people. And he says on page 43, Andy told me that the key to controlling my mind was to simply hold 15 seconds of uninterrupted positive thought. To take one wonderful happy memory and think about that thought and nothing else for just 15 seconds. So I want you to do this. I want you to think about the happiest thought that can come to your mind right now. What's the happiest thought you can come to your mind right now? And think about that. And try to focus on it for 15 seconds. Give it a try. Let's be honest. How many of you were able to maintain the thought? Or did you think about other things? Did you hear the dog bark? Did you hear a door open? Did you hear the refrigerator creak? It's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to do. So he goes on to say, the first time I tried this technique was a few days after my ex-wife told me that our marriage was over. I don't think that would be a great time to do that they're getting divorced. He goes on to say he was just desperate to do whatever it took to control his mind on page 44. And then on page 45, he admits that he can't even hold a thought for more than 1 second. For more than 1 second. But when I started, I could barely hold that thought for even 1 second. And it was at that point that he realized that he essentially had no control over his own mind. That his mind was being controlled by something other than his conscious. And it wouldn't allow him to be breathing any space of calm, right? So just thinking about one happy moment for 15 seconds, he was unable to do that. And most people like me right now in this moment, I can't do that either. Took him 2 hours of practice. 2 hours of practice until he was finally able to hold that thought for 15 seconds uninterrupted without any other moment or thought coming into his mind. So he says, after those 2 hours, I felt calmer. I felt calmer than I've done in months, especially compared to the days when his marriage has ended. Instead, his mind being completely chaotic and negative, he experienced a moment of peace and calm. Peace, calm, and clarity. That's what it's about. Peace, calm, and clarity. Peace, calm, and clarity. All right. So he goes on page 46, and I'm going to read this out here. It makes it easier. On page 46, the process for regaining control of your mind. So here's how you do it. He says, I want you to think of something from your past, the happiest memory you have. A thought, a memory, more than any other that fills you up, makes you happy, and makes you feel great whenever you think about it. Something that no matter what, no one could ever take away from you. Make sure it's one of those that feels right to you, not one that you think you should pick, but the one that feels right, one that genuinely makes you feel amazing. What matters is that you have a really strong, positive, emotional connection with that memory. It could be a happy memory from your childhood, a moment of incredible joy or peace when you were on a holiday, a view that took your breath away for the first time you saw it, an incredible sunrise or sunset, a beautiful beach, a moment your child was born, or a moment with your pet. Remember, you don't have to justify your choice of memory to anyone else. This is only for you and benefit you. Now take that memory, gently close your eyes, and allow yourself to become completely immersed in it. Soak the memory up. Feel those feelings you had when you first experienced that wonderful moment. Remember the smells around you, the sounds you heard while you were experiencing it, how the air felt around you. Make the memory as vivid and immersive as feels right for you. experience the moment again and again and again. Just rest in that wonderful, perfect moment. Now think that thought and nothing else for 15 seconds. Can you do it? If you actually tried this, then you almost certainly couldn't hold the thought for more than just a few seconds at best. But we must keep practicing until you can. Don't get frustrated if it doesn't happen straight away. This is your learning a new skill and breaking a habit that you have probably had for years. Instead, be grateful and delighted that you are taking the first and most important step towards creating the life that you desire. The life that you desire. That you're learning the most important skill there is to learn, and that mastering this skill will unlock everything else you want in life. Don't try this when you do this. Just calmly rest on the thought. Try it now. Calmly rest on the thought. Did you do it? Did you do it? I'm on page 48 now. Or did you skip past it without even trying? If you didn't, consider giving everything you've been told about how important, how foundational this one skill is. Why you decided to skip past this, doing this. I can show you this technique. I can show you the incredible costs to your life of not mastering it, and the astonishing benefits of becoming a master of your mind. But in the end, only you can choose to apply it. Nothing is more important than learning this skill. This is the first and most crucial step on the journey of becoming the person you want to be and living the life you want to live. Without regaining control of your mind, all your efforts will ultimately fall short. If I could go back in time and give myself just one piece of advice, it would be to master this one skill, to be able to sit for 15 seconds and only think about one thought that brings you joy is the one skill that Andrew Leedham in this whole book is saying that if we master this skill, then we are well on our way to achieving unstoppable self-confidence. Now, when you try to do this and your mind starts dragging you off in all kinds of directions, like most people, just detach and observe the craziness going on in your mind. Observe, but don't judge as to what you're thinking about, how your mind jumps about from thought to thought. How nearly all of those thoughts are just fears, distractions, worries, things you forgot to do, things you really should be doing right now, and instead of practicing to hold a thought for 15 seconds. He calls our ego a terrorist, believe it or not. He says the little terrorist between your ears, which is our mind, he calls endearingly a terrorist. On page 48, he goes on to say, if you spent any time doing this exercise, you've just been introduced to your ego. Yes, ego. That's what he's saying. He's saying this is your ego. So if you're sitting there trying to master and think about this one thought, but you think about everything else, the thing you forgot about, something you're worried about, something this or there, you can't hold it for 15 seconds. He's saying that this is your ego. Interesting. And he calls it the little terrorist that sits inside all of our minds, and they're in between our ears. Every time you got distracted, fearful, anxious, doubted yourself when you were trying to do the exercise, it was because your ego was messing with you. This is the negative voice in your head that you think is you, and that throws all kinds of negative, undermining, limiting, toxic, damaging thoughts and feelings at you all day long. And every time you say to yourself, you are not good enough, or you can't do that, good things like that never happen to you. You're not the kind of person that great things happen to. And 1,000 others like it. It's not really you talking. It's your ego. So if you're not feeling confident, not living the life you want, and being who you want to be, then this is the reason why. You have a little terrorist running around in your mind that's fighting against you in a battle that you didn't even know you were fighting. You had no idea. So stop and think about what that means. Stop and think about what this means. Your ego is messing with you. What does this mean? If you're anything like I was, he goes on to say on page 49, that time I was most of the world is all the time. If you're anything like I was at that time, and most of the world is all the time, then you're almost never in control of your mind. You may think you've been trying really hard to make the changes you want in your life, to become the person you've always wanted to be. You may think that. And if you're not in control of your thoughts, then how can you be in control of your actions? Your choices, decisions you make, behaviors that you choose to express. How can you know? We don't. We don't know. So he goes on page 50. He said, without even realizing it, this becomes your identity. So basically what he's saying is we've been conditioned. We've been conditioned from our past to think about things. When we were younger, we were able to dream. When we were younger, if you asked yourself what you wanted to be, you want to be a rock star, you want to be a firefighter, you want to be whatever you wanted to be. You could be anything you wanted to be when you were a kid. However, as you grow older and your mind begins to get exposed to society and everything else in life, we start switching those dreams, our ability to dream, into these things, into focusing on what all the shoulds be. I should be this. I should be doing that. I should have this. I should look at that. I should sound like this. So you get all of this wrapped up and confused into this, conundrum of what you should be. And this is what's developing your ego in between your ears and your mind that's speaking for us most of the time, or telling us that we can't do something, or telling us that we're not good enough, right? Not pretty enough, not whatever enough, right? And our ego begins to cause wreak havoc on our lives. So even without realizing it, even without even realizing it, these should-bes become part of your identity. Who you come to believe you are. So is it the real you? That's a good question. Is it the real you? Soon enough, this way of behaving starts to crystallize into the patterns that you run your life in response to all kinds of situations. They end up becoming the default way that you think. So much that you stop even being aware that they are even there. So all of these things, I think I should be this, I should do that, or I should do this, right, are all a part of your ego. And all of that is being generated after you were younger, when you grew up and you were beginning to be exposed to the environment. It's very incredible how this happened. But so by now, he goes on page 51, 99% of you are so wrapped up in so many layers of social conditioning, muddled thinking, limited beliefs, doubts, fears, concerns, perceived lack of worthiness. And they become almost entirely disconnected from the real you. But it's not fully disconnected. The real you is still there. And it knows the truth. It knows what you are truly capable of doing and accomplishing and achieving. It knows that you're worthy of anything you would like in life or whatever life has to offer you. And it serves up your dreams that it knows that you can achieve, that it knows you can achieve. But your ego fights against all that, all those dreams. It doesn't want to hear it. It's in constant rebellion. Constant rebellion. The real you fights back against the tyranny of your ego, serving negative propaganda every time you try to grow or put yourself out there or make it to your true potential. And so you have massive internal conflict going on. Am I this or am I that? Should I be this or should I be that? And the next day goes on and you keep telling yourself, I should be, I should do this, I should be here, I should be making this money, I should be doing that by now. You don't leave yourself any room to celebrate where you're at right now. It's just this constant want to be moving towards something else. And is that something else what you need? Is that something else going to bring you joy? Is that something else going to be peace? Bring you peace? I know most often than not, when I try to go for certain things or go after certain things, sometimes it feels like it's not enough, right? So I'm here and then I go and chase another job or whatever and I get more pay and whatnot. And then all of a sudden I start to criticize it. Oh, it's not paying enough. It's not this, it's not that. Well, 2 months ago, it was completely fine, right? I was fine. I'm doing much better than I was 2 months ago, but yet still unhappy. The question is why? Why am I doing this? Why is this happening? Why can't I sit still for 15 seconds with a positive thought that everything's going to be okay? How do I do that? So, controlling your mind. The ultimate thought, controlling your mind. All right. So on page 55, the ultimate thought control, the power of no mind is what he goes on to say. The next stage after you've managed to bring in the 15 seconds of positive thought. So once you're able to do that, I hope after today's little podcast here that you'll, try to sit with your thought, that positive thought for at least 15 seconds. Give it a try. Try it all night long if you need to just sit for 15 seconds, just with that one thought. So when you're able to do that, this is when you literally think of nothing, no thoughts at all. It's complete presence, awareness, calm, and serenity. These are people who meditate. I'm not very good at sitting still at all. I'll be the first one to admit that. Right? Here I am talking about the importance of controlling your mind. I have challenges doing that. But I think by sharing this is a good reminder for me or people out there like you that might need it, that this is an important skill to do. And if you want to check in with yourself in the middle of the day to see how you're doing, try to practice that. 15 seconds. 15 seconds on one thought, one positive thought, and not allow the other thoughts to come raking right through like they usually would. So when we have no mind, when I bring in no mind, all my thoughts quiet, and then I simply stop. It's lovely, it's calm, it's peaceful feeling, it's gentle, washes over me, makes me feel good inside. And he goes on to say, I often start by imagining myself gently drifting down in a beautiful crystal clear blue sea. As I lie resting under the water, there is silence, peace, and I feel completely calm. I'm aware of what's around me, but cut off at the same time. Even if there was a storm above the water, underneath the seabed, I'm mentally at peace. I will not break from that focus. So he stays in that state, he says, for a long time until it feels right to him. And sometimes it's only about 30 seconds or a couple of minutes. So it doesn't take very long. Doesn't take very long. So, some things to consider. Some things for you to consider on how to control your mind. Do you control your mind, or does your mind control you? Right? Slow down and consider this. Don't answer straight away. And look to your own feelings for this answer. Next, consider how much better would your life be if you had the power to only think the thoughts that helped you instead of the thoughts that harm you. Consider, have you brought in the 15 seconds of positive thought yet? Do you know, do you really know that this is the foundational skill for all success? For all success. So that means all of us, including me, are going to be spending this evening trying to hold a positive thought for 15 seconds. Because if we can't do that, we can't obtain or be able to block out this stuff for at least 15 seconds, then we've got a little bit of a problem. But he says in this chapter, it took him 2 hours to do it. 2 hours to be able to do it. So 15 seconds over 2 hours, I mean, that's a lot of tries. It's a lot of tries. I assume you got to get up and walk and try to distract yourself a little bit. But it took him 2 hours to do it. So don't get frustrated right away. Don't get upset. You know, have some self-compassion inside too, as you're trying to make this change, trying to accomplish this goal. It's really important. Have some self-compassion. Have patience with yourself. It's really important. So, the other things to consider, you are now aware that your ego and you has been in a constant battle for control of your mind, and you didn't even realize you were in this battle. You didn't realize you were in this battle. But now you know. Now you know. What is your ego? Your ego is what's telling you you can't do it. Your ego is telling you that you're not good enough. Your ego is telling you you're not worthy enough. Right? And when did that happen? Well, that happened when we were exposed to the environment, right? After we grew up a little bit, we went on to school, and then we began comparing ourselves to other people, and we said, oh, I need to be this, I should be this, I should do that, I should dress like this, right? And all of that, even though it's not what you wanted to be, it wasn't your destiny. It was what suited you for the moment. It's what suited you in the environment that you were in. And it became your ego. And it has driven you and has been a part of this journey with you the entire way. So you need to learn how to tame the ego a little bit. And how we learn to tame our ego, how we learn to keep that in check, is we first need to master that skill of being able to hold a positive thought for 15 seconds and not allow additional thoughts to come in or transcend or break that peace. Things to consider. Consider that all the bad feelings you've had about yourself aren't feelings about the real you, but about your ego. Can you see how that changes the way you understand who you really are? Consider that all the bad things that you've had about yourself aren't feelings about the real you, but about your ego. Can you see how it changes the way you understand who you really are? Ego. You know, I think about experiences in my life of how I can relate to the chapter there. It wasn't a very easy chapter. It's kind of a bland chapter, to be honest with you. But I think it is important for us to be able to challenge our mind, right? Because I've had struggles with that too, and sometimes that really just breaks our cycle, knocks you off course, prevents you from being able to complete tasks and things like that. becomes a problematic. It does. But when I think about ego and I think about that stuff, weight for me was always a big thing. Eating disorders and so forth. All my life I've dealt with it. And I've learned, or that I should be, or at least, what I was constantly challenged by, was this notion that I should look a certain way, that I should be able to fit in certain size clothing, per se. And back when I was anorexic, I lost a lot of weight when I was in college. And I lost a lot of weight. I was like skin and bones, let's just say that. And I was wearing a size clothing that I was never able to really get into until I was a kid. And back then, the big clothing company was Hollister and Abercrombie and Fitch. And I wanted so bad to be able to wear a pair of Abercrombie and Fitch jeans, or a pair of Diesel jeans, let's say that, or a Hollister shirt. And when I was bigger and I went in there, I wasn't able to buy anything in those stores. And it became motivation, but that motivation went a little too far. And that's why I became anorexic, because I wanted so bad to be something that I was not, so bad that I allowed my ego of what I should be take over my mind and control my behaviors and my actions. And that was not eating at all, if you will, not nourishing my body, not taking care of myself or anything of that nature. All for what? All because I wanted to fit in the pair of Abercrombie and Fitch jeans. That's why. Well, that day finally came, and the shopping spree came too, along with it. And I remember spending a couple $100 in the mall buying Hollister and Abercrombie and Fitch. I remember doing that. And I came home and I wore it and I loved it. It was amazing. But it was short-lived, because I started to fall into another depression, eating disorders, whatever, and then I ended up getting a little bit bigger, and guess what? I was unable to fit anymore in my Abercrombie and Fitch jeans. It's disappointing. So I remember at a certain point, it took maybe a year or two after a while to accept the fact that I wasn't going to fit in them again. So I put them all in a box and I put them away. And when I moved to this house in particular a while ago, I put them in the attic. And I always told myself, I want to get into those clothes again. But I was in those clothes when I was a teenager. There is no way in hell that I would be able to fit back in those clothes again. And it was something that took me years to accept. Years. So every day that would go by that those clothes were above my head, I would think about how I would get into them, why I can't get into them. And every day that I wasn't able to get into them, I felt terrible about myself. I didn't feel worthy. I felt ugly. I didn't feel good enough. All because I didn't fit in that little box of clothes that I put away in my attic from back when I was a freshman, sophomore in college. One day, I started to realize how that negatively impacted me. How it never made me feel enough. And I finally needed to take my life back. And I climbed into the attic and I pulled the box and I took the box and I threw it away. Now, from that point forward, there was no box in the attic that I had to look towards. There was no box that was telling me that if I did not get into those clothes, that I would not be able to experience a life of fun, play, and ease, happiness, love and affection. You name it. It had to go in the garbage. But unlike my box of clothes, our thoughts are not disposable like that. Our thoughts are fleeting moments that come and go. It would be nice if I can take those thoughts, grab them, crunch them up in my hand and throw them away, flush them down the toilet. But you can't. You can't. So we need to think of other ways of how we can control these thoughts if they're not tangible like the box. So what do we need to do? What do we need to do? How can we do that gesture of throwing something away, but with our thoughts? Well, there's plenty of strategies we can think of, but maybe we can come up with one, right? We have to give it a name. We have to give those thoughts a name. We have to give them something, some recognition so that we call them out. Because if you just sit there in silence and you say, oh, that's a negative thought, just a negative thought, I got to get rid of it. That's a negative thought. It's not really going to do anything unless you actually say it out loud. I don't know about many of you, but even when I'm writing or rereading things, I read out loud. I read out loud because I want to remember what I'm reading. I want to hear it. I want to see how it rolls off my tongue and everything else, because I can make a perfect sentence in my mind in complete silence. And you can make complete thoughts in your mind in complete silence. But we need to attach these things to something more tangible, like the box in my attic that I can just throw away and get rid of that problem indefinitely. Indefinitely. I had that box for almost 12 years. That box controlled me more than I controlled myself. All because of what I should be. All because of thoughts that generated into an ego of what I should be and what constitutes sexy, handsome, beautiful, or something that would be desired by the other party. We can tear ourselves apart because of a thought. Think about life. It's way more than just the clothes you put on. It's way more than just the way you look. There's a lot more to you, to us as individuals, than just those simple things, unimportant things. They become so important because society, because of things around us that tells us what we should be, what we should look like, what we should do, what we should wear. The truth of the matter is, you decide what's good enough. You decide what clothes you want to wear. You decide that. Nobody else. Nobody else. You. That's it. I was reading this quote. I can't remember who it was from, but it was saying something to the effect of, celebrate yourself and do it every day, because if you don't do it, nobody else will. That's another truth. Celebrate yourself every day, because if you don't do it, nobody else will. And that is true on many levels. We need to be okay with just us telling ourselves that we're amazing. We need to be okay with just us telling ourselves that we're gorgeous, or we're beautiful, or we're smart, or we're kind. We need to be okay with that. Nobody else needs to give us any other whatever. I know we look for these nods. These are all external things, but this is your journey. Not to be dictated or to be led by somebody else, but to be led by you. We all have have our stories. We all have things that are going on in our lives, and it's really important for us to keep checking in with ourselves, checking our egos, the little terrorists between our ears from time to time, to make sure that we're on a path to success. To make sure that we can get up every day, get out of bed, accomplish what we need to accomplish, and go to bed, and let it be, and let it be. Let life be. Let it roll, right? Don't force it. Don't do anything with it. Just let it roll. Let it roll. That's what we need to do. I leave you with this quote. If you think, and this is from Henry Ford, if you think you can do a thing or think you can't do a thing, you're right. You're right. If you think you can do a thing or think you can't do a thing, you're right. If you tell yourself no, you won't be able to do it. You won't have the motivation to do it. You won't even know where to start. Think you can do it, because you can. Think you can control your thoughts, because you can. How do you practice to control your thoughts to make sure that they're positive? Well, we have the 15-second. We also have come up with another thing. Give it a name. Give these thoughts a name. Somebody earlier today told me when you hear something positive, call that a deposit. And when you hear something negative, call that a withdrawal. Label it. Oh, that's a deposit, one in the bank. That's a deposit, one in the bank. But if you have a withdrawal, it takes away something in the bank. So try your very best to keep score of the positive thoughts that you have of yourself in a day. And make sure that your deposits outweigh your withdrawals. Make sure, keep score, and keep trying. And if maybe one day you have more withdrawals than deposits, focus on trying to improve the deposits. That's what's important. Now, as you guys know, next week at 6 p.m. on Thursday, we will be into chapter 3 of this book. This book is in my link tree. A couple other things for you guys as well. We have opened up our conference registration. Our Self-Love Club annual conference that will happen in April. It's a virtual conference. It's an all-day affair and event. You have swag bags, lots of learning. It's all virtual, in person on Zoom. Registration is up there for the link. We also have small groups that are running, very small groups, and life coaching. I am a life coach, and there's a second life coach on our staff here as well. And if you're interested in life coaching or whatnot, head on to the website, click on the coaching, and send us a form. Send us a contact form, and we can reach out to you. Anything we can do to help, that'd be great. You guys are amazing and incredible people. But remember Henry Ford's quote today. And I want you to practice that 15-second thing. And I'm going to do it tonight too, and I promise, I pinky swear I will. But if you think you can do a thing, or you think you can't do a thing, you're right. Think positively. Always know that you can. Always know that you're amazing and an incredible human being. And don't let anybody tell you different. Don't let anybody tell you different. Because the only thoughts that matters are yours. But make sure they're deposits and not withdrawals. All my best to you and yours. Take care. Be good. Much love. See you next week.